Did it ever happen to you that you wanted something and you invested your time, your energy, your effort, your willpower, your money, and all of a sudden circumstances kicked in, changed everything, and you couldn't get what you wanted? Well, in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you how to face circumstances that seem to be preventing us from getting what we want so that we can rise above the circumstances and create opportunities for ourselves. My name is Olivia Pinto. I help freedom seekers create abundance and harmony while living the life you truly desire. So if you are a freedom seeker and you wish to have access to valuable information, tips, and tools to create abundance and harmony in your life, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell next to it so you'll get notified every time I post a new video for you. So what are circumstances? Well, circumstances is a different word to basically express the conditions related to a particular action or situation, the dynamics related to a particular action or situation. You invite your friends for brunch and you prepare this beautiful table outdoors and you really want to spend an amazing time with your friends over brunch, and all of a sudden it starts unexpectedly raining. I mean, raining. So obviously the conditions, in this case the weather or the circumstances, have changed, and it may be a much wiser decision to shift the table indoors and to eat inside rather than eat outside and get wet, right? So often it's very wise and common sense and logical and practical to actually let the circumstances dictate our decisions, dictate our actions. However, is it always the wisest decision? Well, not always. What do I mean by that? Well, there are many things that we can look at them, but I think the common denominator of all of them is that it doesn't help us when we use circumstances as our excuse to not do something. We immediately justify why we didn't do something or why we didn't achieve something or why we couldn't get something because of the circumstances. So we immediately justify our lack of achievement, our lack of performance, right? And it immediately also helps us to blame. It's not up to me. I really wanted that, but circumstances kicked in. So it's very easy to blame either the situation, the conditions, the circumstances, or people related to those circumstances, right? And so when we're in a blame mode and we justify and we are in a complaining mode that, I really wanted, but it didn't happen because of, we're actually self-sabotaging. Because while it's comfortable to take the circumstances as an excuse and not do what we wanted, does it support us? Does it promote us? Does it make us get what we really want? Does it help us grow? Does it help us really become a better version of ourselves? Or does it help us to become a victim of the situation? Does it help us to actually be passive and give up and say, well, life forces me to not do something? How much and when do we need to actually let circumstances dictate our actions, our decisions, our behavior? And when is it that it would be wiser not to? Let's look into it. So when something happens and the conditions around what we're planning to do have changed, we need to look and examine each case on its own right. Okay, we cannot have one formula and say each time something happens, this is what you should do. Well, it depends. Who are you? Who are the people involved with it? What are the conditions, the circumstances? What can be changed? What cannot be changed? And so on. And often we need to remember that we are unable to change the external factors, the external circumstances, but we can change the way we respond to them. So we need to examine every situation. However, we need to examine it with objective eyes. We need to examine it with courage, the courage to be honest, to be self honest, and to really, really ask myself how open I am to see whether I'm actually using the circumstances or the conditions as my excuse to not do something, or is it really something that I cannot do anything about it. Okay, so self-examination and self-honesty is the key here in order to be able to evaluate and recognize whether we can do something about it or not. So if I'm using circumstances as an excuse, then even though it feels more comfortable in the moment, deep inside, it's frustrating. It's disappointing. Again, we didn't make it. Again, we wanted something and we didn't achieve it. It doesn't help the self-esteem. It doesn't help the self-confidence. It doesn't exercise willpower. It doesn't exercise the creative mind that can make us think of other options and possibilities, and it keeps us stuck in this little square or this little bubble of familiarity, but it's not necessarily comfortable. So we feel disappointed, we may be angry at ourselves, and we definitely feel unworthy. So then we start kicking in more negative thoughts, and we start feeling more negative and self-destructive emotions. And what that does, it enhances the vicious cycle to let more excuses kick in and to find more excuses for our lack of performance or lack of results. And then we become more of the victim and we use the circumstances more as an excuse. And then that's the vicious cycle, the victim and the excuses from the circumstances and so on. So if we remember that we need to be honest and we say, yeah, actually, in this case, I am very honest and I examine myself and there is nothing I can do about it. There is nothing I can do about it. Okay, I have a meeting in a different city or different country. I need to catch a plane. The flight was canceled. There is nothing I can do about it. Okay, that's one situation. But in most cases, I invite you to see that in most cases, there is a lot we can do about it, either to change it or the perception from which we accept the circumstances. You see, if we know that life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond to it, then we see that we may not have control or the ability to change the external circumstances, the external conditions, other people, and so on. But we definitely have the ability to change how we respond to the situation. So this is really a matter of mindset. Well, I'd like to share with you two quotes that are very powerful and relevant. The first quote is, "The hell with circumstances. I create opportunities." The hell with circumstances. I create opportunities. And that, of course, is for cases where we can change something, all right? We have circumstances, we have opportunities. How do we dance with the two? How we include them both so that we benefit the most out of it? We grow, we expand, and we get what we want. Quote number 2. If an opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. As simple as that. You see, often we look at the situation in a very restricted way. If we expand our vision, if we look at around different angles and so on, we may build a door and all of a sudden possibilities start knocking on our door. So, how do we rise above circumstances? And how do we create opportunities so that we're not the victims of our circumstances? Well, it all boils down to our mentality, to our way of thinking, to our mindset. It may not sound related, but it is directly related, and that has to do with the scarcity or the abundance mentality. You see, if we look at our options and we say, I only have option A and B, and both are not suitable, A is not good because of A, B, C, D, E, and B is not good because of A, B, C, D, E. So damn if I do and damn if I don't. If we think along those lines, we immediately connect to the scarcity mentality, because the message that we give ourselves is there are no other options out there. We're lacking other options. We're lacking anything else but A or B, and both of them are not good enough. So if we connect to the abundance mentality, which is like a muscle that we need to strengthen and strengthen and strengthen by practicing. And here is one way to practice our abundance mentality, by looking at other options. And if we remind ourselves that there are endless possibilities out there for everything, even if I may not be aware of it. So that's the big difference. When we let our addiction, I would say, to excuses, we let go of it. When we say no more being the victim, I choose not to be the victim anymore. I'm fed up being the victim of my circumstances. I want to create opportunities and rise above the limitations of the circumstances. We immediately start thinking more openly. We immediately start thinking for new options. We immediately start looking at new angles. We immediately connect to the idea, consciously or subconsciously, that there are more options out there, that there are unlimited possibilities, even if most of them don't suit us. Maybe one of them is the right one that we need to apply. And that the fact that there is much more to choose from exercises and strengthens our mentality of abundance, the muscle of the mentality of abundance. And then chances are that if we remain open and remind ourselves of this mentality, chances are that an idea that we didn't think of before starts surfacing into our awareness. So all of a sudden, I don't have A or B. I have A and B and C and D and E to choose from. So now that we understood that the key to change this is to strengthen our abundance mentality and to exercise the muscle of abundance, let's look at how we can do it on a practical level. Okay? So the very first step is for you to decide. You see, you need to decide. It's a decision to stop making excuses, to stop being the victim, to stop the scarcity mentality, to stop the closed and narrow-minded way of looking at things. And this decision, the other side of the coin, is the decision to start taking responsibilities for our lives, for our circumstances, for our situation, for our decisions, for our actions, for our behavior, and for the example and the impact that we will give to other people. It's the decision to adopt, exercise, strengthen, and maintain, and constantly expand the abundance mentality. I don't refer to saying, oh yeah, okay, I should stop being the victim. This is not a decision, this is a thought. The decision is when you actually make the commitment to yourself to stop doing that. Now, will you stop doing that? Of course not, because it's a mentality, it's a habit that we're used to. But the decision refers to each time I catch myself being the victim, thinking in scarcity and so on, boop, that's when I'll turn the switch on, put the light on, and function differently. So the decision is to recognize, when we recognize, to do something about it. Okay? And it has to be a decision based on something that you really want. Do you really want to be abundant? Do you really want to take responsibility for your life? Or maybe you don't, which is also okay. Maybe you prefer keep being the victim and keep living in a feeling of lack. That's fine too. It's your choice. The second step is to ask yourself, do I really want it? I mean, really, really want it. That thing that circumstances kicked in and are almost changing the outcome of what I want. Do I really want it? Or another way to ask this is, how badly do I really want it? Am I willing to step out of my comfort zone in order to achieve it? And more importantly, ask yourself, why do I want it? Step number 3 is to choose. And when I say to choose, is to choose very interesting things. One thing that you can choose is actually one person, whether this person is alive or not, but one person that you appreciate a lot, a person that you know that was not the victim of circumstances. And I'll give you an example. For me, this is my father. And my father is no longer alive, but he's still alive in me and around me every single day. And he was one of those examples who lived by the hell with circumstances, I create opportunities. He lived it, and he went really beyond his comfort zone and applied so much creativity and was daring to, like, if the road had only 2 paths, he built a 3rd path if needed. So that was his way of thinking. So once you choose someone like that it can be, again, someone that is alive or someone that passed away. It can be someone that you know personally, like me and my father, and it can be also someone who you don't know personally, like Bruce Lee. For me, I don't know, I never met Bruce Lee, but he represents for me a very, very significant role model in this, okay? And then ask yourself, how would he or she act in this situation? It doesn't mean that you have to do the same thing that they would do, but just connecting with that question and their energy and their way of doing things helps us to get inspired, to get reminded that there are other options out there. Then choose one person that you know that is the victim of circumstances. Ask yourself, how would that person act right now? What would the person do and handle these circumstances? And when you have the person that you admire in that area of creating new opportunities and the victim, which usually goes with abundance and scarcity as well, hand in hand together, ask yourself, which model do I want to follow? Which mentality do I want to adopt? Which results do I want to have? How did the life of this one or the life of this one impacted me differently? So once you think of the first and think of the second and compare, it's very easy to say, oh, no, I choose the abundance way. Okay, because if we just look at our circumstances from our perspective only, it may be a little bit difficult to think broader and wider. Okay, but when we connect to those role models, wow, that can be an amazing indicator and a motivation and inspiration and a way to really, really apply this. The next step is to remind yourself that we cannot connect the dots looking forward. What do I mean by that? Often we don't understand why things happen to us, and as soon as it's uncomfortable or as soon as it doesn't fit what we expected our reality to be, we resist it, we want to change it, and so on. But often this is the lesson that we're supposed to go through, and we don't see the lesson before we go through it. Usually it's only when we look back at what happened and we say, oh my God, that thing or that time or that experience that I thought was the worst thing that happens to me, and I thought I'll never get over it, ended up becoming the best thing that happened to me. And in fact, if this didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am today. So sometimes those uncomfortable circumstances, when we don't use them as the victim, can be actually a blessing, can be a lesson, can be almost like an exam of life to see if we pass the exam and we can go to the next grade. Okay, so we need to remember that maybe if we don't see an ability to change the circumstances, then maybe there is a lesson here. So it's not always about changing the circumstances. It's more about recognizing when it's working for us, when it's supporting our growth and when it's not, when we're using them so that we don't grow. Okay? And the last step is to be grateful, to really, really be grateful. Because you see, when we're unhappy with our circumstances, we immediately tend to complain. We forget to appreciate what we do have and we focus on what we don't have. So let's be grateful, regardless of the circumstances, for what we do have. Because what we do have, a lot of other people don't have. Okay? So let's be grateful. Now, since we're talking today about circumstances, I created for you a free resource that includes 10 tips that are very easy to apply. 10 tips to creating opportunities for yourself. How can you actually create opportunities for yourself? You can pick it up for free over on my blog at oliviapinto.com/15. I will leave a link for you above or below this video. When you click on the link, it will take you to my blog, or if you're already on my blog, you will see below this video a big green button. So you click on this green big button and it will allow you to have access to my 10 tips to creating opportunities so that you can speak the language of despite the circumstances rather than the language of because of the circumstances. Here's a question for you. How do you handle your challenging circumstances? Share your answers in the comment section below because I would love to know what you do in order to rise above your circumstances. If you like this video and you feel it added some value to you, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends wherever they are in the world, and make sure to subscribe to my channel. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Ciao, ciao.